Welcome to another GoPowercat Live. I think Ryan Wallace is either drinking orange juice or a cocktail. I don't care. It could be the one. It could be orange juice and a cocktail.
Well,
It could be.
It's a cold brew with some almond milk, guys. It's been
Oh,
so. This has nothing to do with K-State
that's all right.
or GoPowercat Live,
Okay.
but made a fatal parenting error last night.
Oh boy, here we go.
And that would be when you think it's going to be a weekend and you assume that your kids are going to let you sleep in, and you finish the season, the last episode of The Wrestlers. I don't know if you guys have watched that on Netflix yet.
No,
If you're into WWF, WWE,
I'm
it's
not.
got Al Snow is in it,
I don't
which
know.
I could also make some Al Snow references on here that wouldn't be appropriate. But so then Fitz and Cole, I transitioned and thought, why stop there? And I started the first episode of Beckham or the Beckhams. And so then it was like 1 a.m. And then I decided to have, or my daughter decided that she was going to wake up like at right 5:30, 6 a.m. this morning for whatever reason. Normally she's more like a 7, but yeah. So anyway, it is what time is it? It's a 1:30 cold brew kind of day.
I like it. That's okay. I really don't condone the drinking of caffeine on this podcast, but if 5 Hour Energy would like to sponsor our company, I would make use of it. Guys, I'm watching Iowa State Cincinnati right now. We'll get to all the topics, but I want to touch on this before we get going on K-State stuff. Cincinnati's bad. I knew they weren't good, and I want to say this too. Look at the life Iowa State found with a different quarterback. But the only reason that happened is he was forced to find a different quarterback. Hunter Deckers would be playing, Iowa State would be losing, and Matt Campbell would be talking about their great teammates. He was forced to find a new quarterback, and this kid's pretty good. I don't know his name. I don't have to learn that till later in the season.
Rocco Becht.
Well, see, his name Rocco. I just blew up my mic. Sorry.
Yeah, you did.
Rocco.
Cole,
I think when you finally settle down,
Cole,
and marry,
oh, there he is.
Rocco Carmody would be fantastic. But anyhow, Iowa State's winning. Okay, guys, let's get going. Okay, my bad. What happened? I lost Cole.
He's gone.
Cole was here and he just left us. Okay, Wally, let's just start here. We'll get Cole back in a second.
Okay.
We'll just leave him blank over there. Plus, his head was too small to be with us.
Yeah, or mine's too big. I don't know. Anyway.
I don't know. What went wrong, Wally? What went wrong? I know we talked about it a little bit on the pregame podcast, but now as we're less than 4.5 hours away from kickoff, what went wrong last week at Oklahoma State?
I mean, I think offensively you can go to, I guess the effort and the energy a little bit more than the defensive side. I think the defensive side, I disagree with some fans this week that kind of made the case that, the team like basically wasn't trying, that they didn't want to be there, because very clearly on defense, they did want to be there. They weren't perfect, you know what I mean, in terms of they bent a lot, but they didn't break. And they came out in the second half and they fine-tuned some things and readjusted, didn't allow Alan Bowman to do as much with his legs in the second half. And the execution was a little bit better. Now, so I don't agree with that side of the ball. You can say they weren't dialed in and didn't get off on the right foot, but I disagree with the fact that the defense just didn't try. The offense got their butts whipped from start to finish. I mean, they changed some things, I guess, in the second half, made it a little bit of a game, but I think part of that was just because Oklahoma State, their offense, K-State was able to get them off the field a little bit more in the second half, give the ball back to the offense, and because I mean, what was it? I'm trying to remember. It's been a week now since that Will Howard run, but if you removed the Will Howard run, that was like 59 yards or something like that, they had like 50 yards of total offense up to that point. So, and to me, guys, and as I bring Cole in, because I want to hear his thoughts on kind of the whole effort issue. It was stunning to see that from the offense, which again was the side of the ball guys that was brought back the most experience, particularly in the trenches. How does that group not come out all systems go, firing at will? That was what really blew my mind.
First of all, it's good to be back. You know, when you live in an apartment complex, the internet can be a little shabby sometimes. You're not always at the boss's studio. But while you hit the nail on the head, and I think it's fascinating to me how that wasn't there, because it's sometimes really hard to sit at home on TV and say, oh, this guy, you know, they look like they don't care, or they look like they're not trying. But then you're in person, like I was on Friday night, last Friday, and you sit there and you go, they just don't look like they're playing 100%. And so I don't know if it was a matter of them not caring or not trying, because on TV, sometimes it can look like, oh, they just don't care. Look at that. He's not blocking the route. Or, you know, look at that with Phillip Brooks, for example, when he missed the block, it blew up on Twitter this week. Right. Will Howard got a first down, right? That was a big play. I don't think it's of him not trying. I just think it's of him maybe not being confident and not playing 100%. Because if you talk to coaches, every single coach, no matter who you talk to, will say, if you play 100% and you make a mistake, that's better than not playing 100% and making a mistake. K-State wasn't playing 100%, but they were still making mistakes. I think that's the biggest reason. It's not that they care. It's not about that. They were just making mistakes, and they weren't playing 100%.
They were too casual at times. I mean, we heard the announcers talking about guys not finishing running their routes. And Will Howard's trying to find a receiver, and they're just giving up on routes. It was frustrating. It was just one of those days. It was like they all had one of those days where they didn't want to get out of bed, because that's what it looked like. They just looked like they, you know, it wasn't like they didn't care. It just looks like they were too casual. Like they cared, but we're going to win this. And then they got themselves in a situation where Oklahoma State built a lot of confidence.
Can I bring one more thing up just between talk amongst ourselves here on this topic?
We only have 54 listeners, so it won't spread very far.
It's something that I've kind of thought about a little bit this week and even kind of throughout the season is I think there's good leadership on this team. I really do. And I know that's kind of been brought up a little bit on our boards is, you know, should we start questioning some of the leadership on this team and in the locker room? I think they have good leaders. I mean, I think they have guys that the rest of the team want to rally around. But in a moment like Friday night, and you guys can answer this better because you're in front of these guys weekly. You know, I'm here in Kansas City. I don't get to speak to them in person. Do they have enough, like, pardon me, but enough ass chewers when it comes to leaders? I mean, guys on Friday night that could get in people's faces and say, like, this isn't going to cut it, you know, like, pick it up. Like, do we have enough kind of that? I think Kobe Savage is that way. Something to me says that Kobe Savage would not hesitate to get in your face, but do they have enough of those guys on this team?
That's a great point. I haven't really thought about it. You look at the captains. I think Daniel Green was that. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe he's, you know, that it's not just his communication that's missing on defense. It's his enthusiasm, his spirit. Maybe it's, you know, tamped down on the sideline since he's kind of the background is, you know, not up where the players that are playing need to be. So I don't know. I think they're good leaders, but you're right. They might not have anyone that's willing to tell them the bad news.
Right.
It's going to be, hey fellas, let's play harder. You know, at some point you need someone to have the meltdown. I was told it was Chris Kleiman on Saturday. It took that nobody else had the meltdown, so Coach Kleiman said, "Well, I've got it." And let's go to topic 2, the defensive issues. Did I spell that right? Yeah. Cole reminded me I didn't put the topics in, so I was frantically typing. There's a good chance one of these has a typo. I feel like Joe Klanderman got very gun shy with young corners. And I get that. So he backed them up to play it safe. They're not going to give up the big play. And then they got nickel and dimed, which I think bleeding out slowly is worse. And that's what happened. Granted, they were much better in the red zone. They held them to 6 field goal attempts. But I'll say this. I think that was because in the compressed field, they couldn't back up as far. I don't know. Your thoughts?
I'll take this one first. I am of the belief that the defensive issues are stemmed from still trying to figure out the personnel on the field, right? Like it's a matter of A, getting these guys lined up in the right spot, and B, then deciding what you want to do from there. Because there were times on Friday last week where there were guys that were not in the right spot. And it's not a matter of, them not giving, like on offense, I think it tends to go more along the lines of being afraid to make a mistake. On defense, when they are in the right spot, they are a really good defense. Like I think the linebacking core that you have right now with Austin Moore, Austin Romaine, and Desmond Purnell is very serviceable. You can defend the run with those guys, and then you throw into the mix those defensive linemen. K-State, there's a reason why they were only giving up 2.5 yards a rush before that Oklahoma State game. Like I understand that it hadn't come against the best competition, but they can do it. So then when you start to go against a team like Oklahoma State, who likes to go fast, who's going to throw a bunch of different formations at you, you take into account that then they are without their top two corners in Woolley and Jacob Parrish. Well, they have to adjust the game plan, right? So maybe if the game plan was to play off, well, Joe Klinnerman said on Thursday that Justice James's game was press coverage. And they did press more in the second half because they knew that, well, if we play back, then Justice James is going to get burnt and they're going to run slant routes all day. So at that point, it becomes, how do you get these guys lined up in the right spot, and what do we want to do to put them in position to be successful? What defensive calls do we want to make? And so I think there was a lot of juggling that was going on Friday night of, okay, we can either stay in our base defense and rely on our players, or we can try and out scheme them and maybe we can get lucky and grab a turnover. And neither one of those worked.
Yeah. I also look at the defensive from the secondary point of view and go back to, again, kind of an ongoing topic amongst the fans, which is like, where are the turnovers? Why can't this defense force any turnovers? And when it comes to interceptions, I think Cole makes a great point in the sense of, when we talked about being able to play free and play fast, I think that this group is still working through communication and stuff. And you think about that when it comes to like the offensive line, of the rhythm you have of you remove a piece and the continuity kind of can go to kaput sometimes. And that's why we talk about how needed continuity is amongst the offensive line. I think you need continuity at a place like the secondary too, though, because then you've got, last year you had Kobe Savage and Drake Cheatham, guys that were, quote, new to the defense, but Cheatham had experience, Hayes had experience. But then you had those guys, and I think there was a level of trust on the outside guys where it was like, well, I know Echo is going to do what he needs to do, and I know Juju is going to do what he needs to do. And I'm just going to play my role. You didn't need to kind of keep stuff out of the corner of your eyes with what's going on at cornerback like I think you do this year. And so those guys aren't able to play as free, play as fast. I think they're running their assignments, but also kind of knowing, I need to keep an eye on what's going on up here. I need to keep an eye on helping if Austin Romaine gets out of place, or, if something goes awry in front of me. They just can't play as loose and as fast. And I think that's part of the reason why we're not seeing, them be as disruptive in the pass, let alone make interceptions.
Okay. Well, we kind of got into this.
There it is.
But I want to talk about the offensive side of the ball, because the next topic, of course, is going to be quarterbacks. So these all kind of tie together. Will Howard has not typically thrown a lot of interceptions. This year he is, and it blossomed to 3. Now, some of that probably wasn't all his fault. And that gets to the bigger picture of, why are they having turnovers that involve decision-making by seniors? Why are they struggling in this area? It's not young guys making the mistakes. It's veterans. I feel like I saw Will's confidence flicker, and he started making bad decisions that led to the turnovers. But boy, they better have 0 in this game. They better win the turnover margin in this game. Setting aside any analysis of the two teams, this has to be an important area for K-State. Wally?
Yeah, I'll leave this off just by kind of explaining one particular play, and again, why everything just seemed to like compound on itself last Friday night. So the first interception that Will Howard throws, in Will's defense, I was told earlier this week, or post game, during the last weekend, that part of the reason that play went as poorly as it did wasn't just the interception. His first read, which if you want to go back and dig up the play, you can. I'm not going to throw the player under the bus. Didn't run the right route. That was supposed to be his first read. Didn't run the right route. And then because the line got beat, Will had to force the issue. By the time he went to read number 2, you already had 2 guys in his face. And then Will made the poor decision to just chuck it up. And that was the deep ball to Phillip Brooks, which that is where Will went wrong, which is at that point, you either got to eat it, throw it away, take a flag, try and run. But like, you can't just throw it up into double coverage just because your first read didn't go right. So anyway, as I toss it to you, Cole, I think that's where part of it is. It's maddening because you've got a guy like Will Howard that should kind of know better, but you've also got receivers that should know better. Like, how do we not know plays now? They're not any freshman receivers playing. We're not talking about guys that, are new to the playbook here. So that was, if that continues to happen, especially in a game like tonight, you've got Tim DeRuyter is a defensive coordinator he is going to attack and attack and attack. You got to play smarter tonight, especially in another road game in Lubbock, and not let one mental miscue again compound on itself and become where everything goes haywire.
I worry about kind of the exact opposite of what we saw with Adrian Martinez last year happening with Will Howard. If you want to compare it to what happened with Adrian at Nebraska, where there's a lot of big plays, but there's a lot of turnovers. And so then he comes to K-State and he maybe decides, hey, I'm not going to force the issue as much. I'm going to check the ball down. If it's 3rd and 10, I'm just going to throw a little swing route to Deuce Vaughn, and then it's going to be 3rd and 7 in K-State's going to punt. I'm a little worried that not that Will make those decisions, but that maybe this coaching staff will say, hey, we don't want to turn the ball over. We would rather punt the ball than throw it down the field with an arm punt and get Will's confidence in the tank. And if you're a K-State fan, that might not be the worst thing, because I think as long as K-State doesn't turn the ball over, if they don't beat themselves, they're going to have a great chance to win this game. I'm of that belief 100%. But the problem has been K-State has been winning games, and they have been trying to beat themselves. So how do they limit that? I think you have to make sure that you put your quarterback, you put your skill guys in positions to be successful. And if that's 3rd and 12, and instead of trying to force it, the post route over the middle of the field, well, maybe you run a screen pass. And if you don't get it, then you trust your defense and you play the field position game. It's not something we've seen K-State do as far as going conservative. I can't remember the last time Alan Klein really called a game that was that conservative, but I think that might be the plan, especially in the beginning part of this game, just to make sure the confidence in that room, in that group, is still high. So if you have a chance to win it at the end of the game, they have that confidence to go do it.
I will say this, though, Fitz, too, is that like anybody that thinks that Will Howard isn't going to commit more turnovers, you got to prepare yourself for it, because even last year, there were some risky throws that we were all cheering for because Adrian Martinez was so opposite of that. He would not take any risks. And again, last year, some of those throws just worked. And maybe you could say, well, Will needs to get back into that level of timing. Maybe his timing is off, but like for whatever reason, there were passes last year that you were going, and then they would get in there. But I mean, he's always kind of been a risk taker. And I think at some point, hopefully down the road of this season, you'll see some of those risks pay off like they did last year, where it'll get by a defender or he'll be able to sling it in there. But the idea that Will Howard is going to like magically clean up the turnovers, they need to go down, but I don't think they're going to just vanish entirely.
What's interesting about last year, I love that point you made, Wally, is he threw so many 50-50 balls that it was like heads you win 80% of the time.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And it started with his first touchdown at TCU. He threw a ball to Cade Warner. I still don't know how the ball got to him, let alone caught it. So that good fortune worked out, but that came from a point of such grand confidence. And when that grand confidence becomes okay confidence, you start thinking about it too much and you don't release it right. And
right. You hesitate for a second and
you're in trouble. And that brings us to this. What would be the scenario, Cole, where Will comes off the field for Avery Johnson, not just for a committed series to Avery having that they've already schemed, but will get out, Avery go in. What causes that in Lubbock tonight?
An injury. If you want to know my honest opinion,
yeah.
I think that's the only way that Will Howard isn't the number one guy by the end of this game, or K-State is either winning by a lot or losing by a lot. People want to talk about the loyalty aspect, and I don't really think it has anything to do with loyalty as much as it does. K-State's best chance to win right now is with Will Howard at quarterback. And I understand why fans are frustrated and why fans maybe want to see somebody else. The backup quarterback is always the most popular person in all of sports, right? We know this to be true. But the backup quarterback, when he's a 4-star recruit, and Kansas State hasn't had a quarterback that's this highly rated as a recruit since Josh Freeman, it's understandable why fans want to see him. I get that. But right now, Will Howard is a better quarterback, regardless of how many turnovers he throws, regardless of what happens tonight in Lubbock. Will Howard gives K-State the best chance to win. And I think that has as much to do with the personnel surrounding Will Howard, because they built this team for Will Howard. They did. They structured this offense for Will Howard. You are not going to be able to just flip the switch and throw Avery Johnson into the game, regardless of what people think, and say, you are the quarterback now, and the offense looks completely different. That's not what happened. That's not going to happen. That's not how running practice. That's not how running offense works. You don't just throw a completely different quarterback, which is what Avery is, into the fold and change the offense. This isn't Madden. This is real football, and it's really hard to go from one quarterback to another when their skill sets are completely different.
Okay, Wally, my question for you is different. How should Kansas State use Avery Johnson in this game?
Well, they have to have him as part of the game plan. And that is the part to me that's maddening right now, is the questionable usage or lack thereof, I guess, of Avery Johnson. Because I'm with Cole 1,000%. This is still Will Howard's job. He will be the starter. He should be the starter unless things go terribly, terribly wrong. But it makes no sense the way that, again, from what I've been told and what we've heard, to have Avery Johnson basically go through the entire week of preparation for UCF thinking that he's going to be a major part of that game and then doesn't see the field. And Will Howard ends up playing, which is great. Kudos to Will for, mustering up the strength or whatever to overcome his setback that he had at Mizzou and come out and play immediately the next week and play pretty well. But so you've got Avery, he's preparing, you don't use him. And then I'm told you go into the Oklahoma State game and they didn't prepare with Avery at all. And then we get into the game, and I know you didn't prepare for him, but you probably could have used him, and they still didn't use him. So it's like, we're going to prepare for him and not play him. We're not going to prepare with him, and things are going to go bad, and we're still not going to play him because we didn't prepare for. He has to be a weekly part of the game plan at this point. Unless Fitz, the goal is to redshirt him, which again, Chris Kleiman has not said that. So until he says that, he has to be some sort of wrinkle in every weekly game plan.
I agree. And this is interesting to me because I think you could fault this coaching staff, and Chris Kleiman would start with this, for preparing for everything going right. I think one of Bill Snyder's faults that was also kind of a positive is he often prepared for everything to go wrong. Let's work on this and this and this and this. And then at times they did go wrong because they didn't spend enough time preparing on what they wanted to do. And if you know what went on behind the scenes, that's exactly what happened. He was constantly thinking about what could go wrong. And, eventually he was even switching game plans, defensive plans the night before games. So he was just overthinking.
He was a worst case scenario guy.
Yeah, he really was. And I get it. Folks, you're watching the GoPowercat live with myself, Fitz, Ryan Wallace. Let's get this off there so you can see our names. And our Cole Carmody, K-State at Texas Tech, 6 p.m. tonight. It's on FS1. Boy, it's a night game. I know you're not shocked. Next week, of course, will also be a night game here in Manhattan. We've missed you in Manhattan. Come back to town next Saturday for TCU. And with that, let's get in to look at around the Big 12. There's the first typo. I just did Big 12 as one word. That's going to be the rebrand. I've decided Big 12, one word, rebrand. Boom. Magic, Brett Yormark. Magic. I am watching Iowa State dismantle Cincinnati. Let's put this down as a bad gambler. That's me. Understanding a bad line, but still like Vegas has to know something I don't. How Cincinnati was favored,
Yep.
I'm not quite grasping, but they were.
Yep.
And Iowa State has found life with this new quarterback who I think is named Gunther. No, that's not right.
Rocco.
Dang it.
Going against a Corleone on Cincinnati.
I love it. I love that they call him the Godfather. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Anyhow, Iowa State, a little bit surprising. They kind of found some life here, but they still play great defense. That's the bottom line. Iowa State will D you up, and now they got someone who can score the ball at quarterback.
Here's the thing about Iowa State, guys, that it kind of ties into K-State, especially when you start thinking about 2024 a little bit, is Iowa State, and I think you could even throw Baylor in there, although things have, maybe it's taking Baylor a little bit longer because they can't figure it out in the trenches. Their offensive line and defensive lines right now are bad. But Iowa State ran the gamble after the Purdy class. What was that, 2 years ago? Heavy group of seniors, a lot of experience. They rolled out a ton of freshmen and sophomores, and a lot of guys that Cole, you and I knew about because that was the class that they whipped K-State on front to back. It was like all K-State offers, and Iowa State won them, every one of them. But those guys have been playing now for a season, if not two, for a couple of them. And so you're starting to see that pay dividends this year, where those guys are playing looser and faster, and they're not thinking about the game plan as much because it's just coming naturally to them. Fitz, I agree. I did not see this coming on offense. I thought without Deckers in the mix that they would have some more struggles, and I guess they have to some extent. They're not like lighting the world on fire, but Cole, like, to some extent, like, that's kind of what is going to either have to happen at some point the rest of this year for K-State, or definitely next year, is you're going to have that hiccup in order to get those guys experience. And, Iowa State took their lumps a little bit last year, but it's coming up. I don't want to say rosy, but I mean, it's coming up a lot better than it was last year, this year, because those guys are a little bit more seasoned now.
I think winning games, you never need to apologize for winning games. And so it's understandable that people can be a little skeptic of Iowa State. I mean, they beat They beat Oklahoma State. They're going to beat Cincinnati. They beat Northern Iowa. Those are their 3 wins, or those are 3 are going to be their 4 wins, because with this one they'll move to 4-3. Blanking off the top of my head of their 4th win, but I know they lost to a MAC school in Ohio. They lost to Ohio. Cincinnati lost to Miami of Ohio. So again, like, the schools they have beaten are not probably any of the schools that are in the top 6 of the Big 12.
Let's look this up.
So I'm not ready to say that Iowa State's a top half of the conference team, but if they go 6-6 or 7-5 after that loss against Ohio, when I don't think anybody thought they might even win another game the rest of the season, and Matt Campbell's yelling at fans in the stands when they said, "Hey, you're on the hot seat," like, for them to have turned it around with a redshirt freshman quarterback, I mean, it says a lot about Iowa State. And I don't necessarily want to sit here and say Matt Campbell, but it says a lot about Matt Campbell that he's able to get those kids to buy in, because there's definitely some coaches around the country who would have just packed it in. So you're right. While it has how it pertains to K-State, K-State's going to have to play some young players. But you know what? When you see Justice James and you see Jacob Parrish and you see Will Lee, those are 3 sophomores, 2 redshirt sophomores that are going to be in the secondary for K-State for a long time. VJ Payne, a guy who's going to be in the secondary for a long time. Austin Romaine. Like, K-State has a lot of young kids that are getting valuable experience. And it's very similar to what Iowa State's doing.
TCU, guys, that was the other Iowa State win, by the way.
Okay, yep.
That's a good segue. Let's talk about those 2:30 games here. We got a pair of them leading up. It's only 4 games this Saturday, as we had the chaotic game earlier in the week that cost me money. I'm not such a bad gambler. I was right for about 13 seconds.
Yeah.
And then West Virginia gives up the Hail Mary on just horrendous defense.
Guys, Houston has dudes. You know what Houston's problem is? They don't have coaching.
I was going to say they don't have a dude coaching.
Yeah,
they've got some players now.
He's well energized with his Red Bull, but he's not a great coach. But here we go. BYU wanders into TCU. What's TCU, like a 5-6 point favorite?
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
The TCU was awful last weekend. Cole, does BYU roll into Fort Worth and win the battle of the Mormons against the Christians?
It's a great way of putting it. I saw a stat somewhere that these schools, I mean, they've been in the same conference 3 times now, or something ridiculous in their history. Yeah, I actually think they do. I think BYU is a much better team than TCU. TCU is without Chandler Morris. Not that that's a big deal. I've watched Chandler Morris multiple times, and it's still amazing that Sonny Dykes picked Chandler Morris over Max Duggan last year. That probably says more about Sonny Dykes than it does about Chandler Morris. But yeah, I think BYU wins this game. I don't even know if it'll be particularly close. The fact that they're a 5-point underdog, I mean, if you are a gambler, you should just be smiling from ear to ear, because I say that, and of course TCU is going to go in and win, but I do think BYU, they're going to be able to score on TCU. TCU's defense is not good. TCU's offense with a backup quarterback is not going to be particularly good, and BYU has had a decent defense at times this season. I think BYU wins this game, and I said it somewhere. I think I put it on our message boards. Guys, it wouldn't shock me if every single underdog in the Big 12 won today. The other underdog is at 230, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But BYU, I mean, they are a sneakily, they have sneakily. Is that a word? I don't know.
Sneakily.
They've only have 1 loss, guys. Like, this is a team that I don't think they're going to be playing in Arlington, but they could very well finish the season 8-4.
Josh Hoover is starting at quarterback for them today. I had to look that up. Even as a recruit, 3-star recruit from Rockwall, Texas.
Okay.
Redshirt freshman. I will be. How confident should I? I'll roll the dice and say TCU. And here's why for me is because I haven't watched a whole lot of BYU, but I was just at a high school game last night with our colleague Kevin Flaherty, who KU guy. I mean, he watches KU all the time, and so he got to see when the Jayhawks beat BYU, and he was telling me what he thought BYU did was they kind of defensively had their gaps spread out because they didn't want to get anybody to allow Devin Neal and those guys get to the outside, run some option stuff. And it ended up where KU just said, all right, we'll just hammer A gap all day. And so that's what they did. If Imani Bailey can get going today for TCU, it won't matter who the quarterback is. They'll just run it right down BYU's throat. But it should be a competitive game. It should be.
Okay, Cole, I've gone to the dictionary. Here's what we got.
Sneakily.
Yeah.
All right, I like it.
I guess if Will Lee's on the field, it works. Go away. Don't go away. That joke doesn't last long. Got to get rid of it. Folks, we got some great questions from the comments section. We'll get to those after we talk about KU at Oklahoma State. I'm intrigued by the fact that K-State was 11-point under favorite last week in Stillwater. Yeah, that didn't work out so well. Kansas, which I think is a fairly equivalent team to K-State, even prior to that game, is a 3-point favorite. So I think that reflects a view about Oklahoma State changing drastically. I think KU wins this game, guys. I think K-State had to help Oklahoma State. Even though Oklahoma State was better, it still was an 8-point game. K-State was good enough to hang around even without a great effort. I think even with Jason Bean, KU's going to go in there and win this game. Wally.
I'm a little bit closer on it. I wouldn't touch it like from a betting standpoint.
Yeah, me neither.
But I also see this one being kind of eerily competitive for whatever reason. I guess if I had to put my finger on it, I think Oklahoma State to me proved themselves a really worthy rush defense. When you handle K-State the way that they did up front, I think that will maybe limit to some extent what KU likes to do, kind of starting things from the ground and then working into the passing game and opening some things up there. This screams like a game where we're finally going to see. Is it Jason Bean? Is Jalen out for sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're finally going to see a team, I think, that's going to force Jason Bean to have to throw the ball a little bit. But in saying that, I mean, Oklahoma State's offense is just still not great. And if they don't have Stribling again, that's what was stunning last week, was that they didn't have Stribling and they still were able to do stuff to K-State with their passing game. But yeah, I mean, I could see KU's defense being advantageous and attacking Alan Bowman and getting some turnovers. So if I had to decide, I'd probably say KU. But Cole, I see Oklahoma State sticking around, and maybe KU or Vegas would think.
Okay.
Alan Bowman versus Jason Bean. Like, at the end of the day, that's your quarterback matchup, and I think that's
Bean.
I agree,
Yeah.
and I agree. I think Jason Bean is better than Alan Bowman, but I want to throw this stat out before we move on, guys. Oklahoma State has won 8 out of the last 9 games where they were underdogs at home under Mike Gundy.
That's crazy. That is
So,
crazy.
It would not shock me to see Oklahoma State win this game, simply because if I'm Oklahoma State, I am putting 7 guys in the box and I am making Jason Bean beat me one-on-one. Throw it up and see if Arnold and Fairchild at the tight end position can go make a play. Because if they can't, then they're gonna be in for it's gonna be a low scoring game. If I'm not betting this game, but if I would probably take the under, because I don't see very many points getting scored.
Also, KU could they be looking ahead at OU next week? I just realized that's who they've got coming up.
Yeah.
Maybe they let this one slide a little bit.
I want to give a shout out in the comments to Tom Terrible. I'm hiring you as producer of this live. This is his comments recently. Agrees with us on BYU winning. Okay. KU will beat Oklahoma State. Okay. By 10 points, he says. Bean is better than Bowman. A good way to become producers, just agree with us if you don't. But also, Tom alerted me that Arkansas is only down 3 with less than 3 minutes at Alabama.
Wow.
So I flipped over to this game. Alabama's got the ball at 2nd and 13 around midfield as I do some live broadcasting here for some reason. But let's get some of these K-State questions. Alabama got it first down. Here we go. D-Wayne, funny how people act. There it is. That KSU is in a slump. They're defending Big 12 champs. Texas Tech has had an entire decade of mediocrity, and K-State's dominated. So does that mean Tech breaks that domination today, or that K-State just has a number?
I think there's some mental gymnastics being played here. Whenever K-State goes down to Stillwater, they never win. I think that's crazy. It's amazing how that works. And K-State in the last 11 games against Texas Tech is 10-1. So take that for what it's worth. I know history is not always a good indicator of the present, but there's nobody on that Texas Tech team that has ever beaten K-State. For this, the last time Texas Tech beat K-State, would you like to guess who each quarterback was on the team?
Pat Mahomes.
Correct.
I don't know I can't get my time from here. Jesse Ertz?
Hubner?
Patrick Mahomes versus Joe Hubner.
Hubner.
Yep. So,
that's a pretty close matchup in quarterbacks.
That would make sense a little bit. Yeah.
No offense, Joe.
That's
funny. Our producer, Tom Terrible, says, I have K-State losing this game and finishing the season at 7-5. And Logan Wild says, if K-State loses, is 6-6 the ceiling for K-State?
Well, I think I'll just point out, to go back to the past question too, and I kind of went on a rant about this earlier in the week on Wabash Station. I think if you think K-State's in a slump, it's because you had probably expectations set too high. You got caught up in what was an amazing season last year and kind of forgot about the amount of new parts that they were going to have to break in this season. That's not me creating an excuse. That's, nothing along those lines. I mean, I'm just saying, I think, and I was guilty of it too. I thought that the offensive line all returning would be a bigger factor in K-State's season than it has been this year. They just haven't been as good as I thought, and therefore the offense hadn't been as good as I thought. And but still, yeah, 6-6. I don't know. That seems low, Cole. I pegged this team at 8-4 entering the season. I don't think they'll dip below 7-5.
No, even if K-State loses this game, if in order to go 6-6, they would have to lose to probably one of Baylor and TCU, probably, and then you throw KU and Texas or Iowa State. That's not going to happen. I can't see them going unless there's more significant injuries. 6-6 seems like a really, really low number.
Yeah. Well, what that means, though, if you look at the schedule, the most obvious losses would be Texas and Kansas, the road games.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, that's troublesome if you lose to Kansas, but they're legit this year. TCU, Houston, Baylor, and Iowa State at home. I guess Iowa State would be the team I'd pick out of that foursome on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. But yeah, I think 7-5 is probably the floor for this team if they lose this game. I don't see them losing at Kansas. I just don't. It's one of those like Texas winning the Big 12. I got to see it to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
You got to prove me wrong. Finally, one more, and I appreciate this question because it gets us out of football. So we talk about something else. Shakedown wants to know, not football, but why was Tang in prime? Jerome Tang. I'll be honest here, folks. That was worthy. I don't like texting head coaches just for the heck. I never, if I'm going to bother him, I want to bother him. And I thought, what's up with this? He said, just out visiting friends. I'm like, okay. I think there are some similarities between these guys, how they've lit a fire under their fan bases, how they've kind of caught some national attention. Jerome Tang, nowhere near what Deion Sanders has, but it was similar. I think their approaches aren't that different in coaching, at least the mental side, the locker room side. I think they're very similar. I think Tang's a little bit more hands-on, X's and O's. Coach Prime, I think, is big picture and let the coordinators do their magic, which is not a bad way to coach, which is, a lot of people have talked about that. Why don't you hire this guy and just hire really good coordinators? That's true, but coordinators get picked off and then you kind of lose who you are. You kind of have to have the head coach set that tone. But any thoughts on that meetup? It was just interesting to me. It was kind of cool and kind of like, what the hell's going on here?
You got some new shades out of it, Cole, which apparently he said he's going to wear at Big 12 Media Day. So I'm curious to see if he holds true to that.
I think it's cool. I mean, the way they care about kids, like that's the thing that sticks out to me.
Yeah.
I mean, you say what you want to say about Deion Sanders, and can we just say what a horrible loss for them last night? I mean, 29-0 at halftime. And
guys, I was so confused when I started. I don't know. It was Big Noon. Whoever I was watching, it's like, a thrilling finish in Boulder. I'm like, what? I gave up on this game. It was a blowout. Yeah. So I thought they were going to win. And then I'm looking at the highlights like they lost.
Yeah.
I tried to tell people don't get on that Colorado hype because of the TCU win. Let's not do it.
It says more about TCU than it does about Colorado. I think we've figured that out by now. But, just as it pertains to Tang and the way, like, how could you not want your son to go play for either one of those guys? Like at the end of the day, if they come into your living room and they offer your son a scholarship, it's going to be really hard to turn it down. And we've seen on the recruiting trail with Jerome Tang, whatever recruit he wants to get, more often than not, if they want him to come on campus for a visit, if they want them, if he wants a kid, there's a really good chance he's going to land him. And, in a non-NIL world, if you take NIL completely out of the picture, I really wonder if almost, if all of the top recruits are really seriously debating Deion Sanders in Colorado. I mean, take NIL out of the picture. Who do you want to take you to the NFL? Who do you want to play for that you can go up to and you can look up to as a role model? I mean, shoot, guys, like Deion Sanders would be that number one guy on a lot of kids' lists. Yeah. And even with the NIL, we're seeing that. So, I mean, it emphasizes how cool it is to see a guy like that. Hopefully he sticks around when they come to the Big 12 and, really helps put the Big 12 on the map nationally.
After last night, though, doesn't that kind of like, that was one of the first things I thought of after them losing to Stanford was like, and again, maybe this is me being naive that like coaches have zero time during the day, that like they're just constantly either at practice or watching film or doing something. Like that's probably me being naive. They probably do have some free time during the day, but to me, like, and again, maybe he only met with Coach Tang and the staff for like 5 minutes.
I think the whole video was it.
Yeah, we don't know. But also, like, do you think he would like? I don't know. Maybe that's normal. But like, if they're playing Oregon or USC, do you think he's just like hanging out with guys like the day before the game?
It's true.
Like, I was like, really? Like,
it does change the context after losing.
Yeah.
It does.
I can't see Kleiman and Snyder just being like, "Oh yeah, Greg McDermott's here. Like, I'll chat with him over lunch." Like, no.
It was really cool. I would love to play for Coach Prime only if he gave me the nickname Iceman, which was one of Wally, there was a white guy that they referred to him as Iceman. And there was the other guy. I don't know who it was. It was a K-State that he got Iceman. Like, I assumed that's what that was about. I thought it was hysterical.
Yeah.
Okay, boys. Did the Cats get it done tonight?
Cole, you want to do it or me?
Well, okay, I'll go first. I will go first. Yes, I do. I think K-State wins this game. You look at it, and you can look at it from multiple perspectives. You can look at it from the perspective of this K-State team looked horrible last week. Texas Tech looked great last week. Texas Tech is at home. It is a night game. This is the team that's going to come out and roll. But then if you look at it from the other perspective and you say, hold on, K-State is still the defending Big 12 champions. They have completely owned Texas Tech for the past 11 years. There is a mental side that Texas Tech, a mental hurdle that they have to jump through regardless of the outcomes on the field. They have to see success to understand and really believe that, hey, we can beat these guys because they haven't seen it happen. And so I think that coupled with the fact that there is going to be a fire lit under those players from Manhattan, Kansas, from their head coach, I would be hard-pressed to pick against K-State simply because, I think they're more talented. I mean, we've pointed out their flaws, and rightfully so. But I think they're more talented. I think they have the advantage in the trenches when it comes to running the football. I think they have the advantage in the trenches when it comes to even stopping the run. I know Taj Brooks is really good, but this K-State team has been really good at stopping the run. If you can win in the trenches, you are going to win this game. And if K-State can win both the offensive line and the defensive line, they're going to win. And so I think there's a good chance they do that. So that's why I'm picking K-State.
Yeah, everything we've been told leading up to this game is that this is still a very united locker room and a pissed off locker room. So I would be stunned if K-State came out and laid an egg again in Lubbock. Exactly what Cole said. For all the reasons that you would think that this leans Texas Tech, I like K-State, and I said it. Quick plug for our pregame show. Go back and listen. There's still time, plenty of time before the game tonight. Go back and listen to that because I dove into the Red Raiders a little bit more. But as I told Fitz earlier in the week, I just think K-State is a bad matchup for Texas Tech. What Cole said, they're running the ball really well this year. That falls right into what K-State's strength is on defense. And again, I just feel like this is an advantageous Texas Tech offense or defense, but I think that the offense will dial in what they're strong at again, getting back to the ground game, finding a couple things for Will Howard to exploit in the air. And then honestly, Fitz, as long as there's not some horrendous issues on special teams that kind of give Texas Tech an overwhelming advantage in that area of the game, which Texas Tech is damn good at special teams this year. I like K-State. It'll be tight. It could be ugly at times, kind of like last Friday, but I think K-State gets out of there with a W.
I agree, and I think K-State does a lot of damage with the quarterback run game, including Avery Johnson. I don't think there's any way they won't have him in the mix this week just to try to lift some of that pressure off of the quarterback, Will Howard. I totally spaced his name. I spaced Will Howard's name.
I was like, he's going for something dramatic here.
Fitz wants Will Howard bench confirmed.
No, my God. Guys,
you're
my
still
brain.
Thinking about Joe Hubner. You're still thinking about Joe Hubner.
That when I think of quarterbacks. I do think K-State wins this, and I think they'll kind of rebuild that confidence and come home for a couple winnable games. But boy, if they lose it, someone mentioned that if they go 6-6, Chris Kleiman's record will match Bill Snyder's last 5 years Big 12 record. Well, I still refuse to call the pandemic a real season. That just was a mess. And I'm not going to say that because he played the games and lost instead of not playing the games and not having a outcome makes it bad. But anyhow, we'll see what happens. I appreciate everyone watching. We're going to do these on regular basis. If K-State keeps playing at night, I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I probably won't do one next week because I got to rest up to actually go cover a game because it'll be the first time in 3 weeks that I'll be at a game. But make sure you, as Wally said, you got time to go back, listen to the pregame show or watch it. You got time to listen or watch the Friday walkthrough. What is wrong with me, Cole? Am I just totally folding up my tent here before we're done?
Yeah.
We got, yes. And then daily deliveries. We got so much content up. We appreciate you watching. We'll continue to do these. Appreciate all 80 some. How did we just peak at 87 as we're signing off? Go watch your 2:30 games. You got Kansas at Oklahoma State on FS1, and of course BYU at TCU on ESPN. Let's get out of your way. It is 10 minutes from kick. Thanks for watching, everyone. Much appreciated. As I try to find the right thing to click. You know what, guys? We're just going to end, and I'm going to talk until it just ends the stream because I can't find the right button.